Sad times for the American voter. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. No matter who wins the election, there will be little joy. Both Clinton and Trump would enter the White House under dark clouds. They would be the most unpopular president-elects in history. Talking Points believes most Americans simply want the tawdry campaign to end. It's that terrible for the country. It should come as no surprise to anyone that more women are emerging to hammer Trump. Piling on is now an American sport. And like the NFL games, the news media has set up programs where so-called experts sit around for hours offering gross speculation about things they could not possibly know anything about. In America today, all accusations are convictions. Therefore, both Trump and Clinton, who have extremely controversial resumes, will be battered without mercy right up to Election Day. WikiLeaks apparently has thousands of emails left to drop on Clinton. Expect a torrent of personal accusations against Trump. The result, a diminished country. We the people do not deserve this, but there's little we can do about it. Clinton and Trump won the nominations. That's our system. Both have dubious histories, but voters did not seem to care. People ask me all the time, where are the inspirational leaders like the Roosevelts and Ronald Reagan? The answer to that question is that most decent people don't want to be any part, they don't want any part of the internet gutter snipes and a press that celebrates scandal, condoning contrived or even dishonest attacks. Thus, many good leaders simply sit it out. By the way, there are no journalistic standards anymore, as the WikiLeaks hackers have demonstrated. The cold truth is our political system has devolved into a chaotic circus where candidates with the most money usually win. Summing up, with no privacy in the country anymore, with little restraint in the media, with millions of Americans more interested in texting and social media than actually experiencing life, we have now come to a point in history that would give Nero solace. The next president of the United States will either be Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. As Cronkite once said, that's the way it is. And that's a memo. Now for the top story tonight, reaction with us here in New York City, Newt Gingrich, author of the new novel, Treason. So where am I going wrong here, Mr. Speaker?
Sadly, I don't think you are.
It's a pretty dark scenario.
This is probably the worst presidential election certainly in the last 100 years.
I think it's the worst in history. I was looking at the Jefferson-Adams mudslinging, which was pretty vicious, but not on this level, with the press able to get out in a heartbeat anything the press wants to get.
And a good friend of mine, Barry Castleman, who writes a blog in Minnesota, wrote a piece Tuesday about what he called a news media coup d'etat. He said he's seen bias before, but on Friday he watched virtually the entire news media attempt to destroy the candidate of one of the two parties.
But they have to report these things, particularly when they're on tape, don't they not?
They don't have to report them for 72 continuous hours. They don't have to take a poll at the peak of the reporting. I mean, you know, the poll that came out on Monday was totally false. And the other part of it is they get to choose. You have WikiLeaks saying things such as the thing that's going to be in your show later on, which is Hillary Clinton gives a secret speech to a Brazilian bank and says, "My dream is open trade and open border."
Yeah, we're going to get an expedition on this.
But you don't. But that actually, if you think about it, is an amazing comment, which doesn't get the same kind of coverage.
It's not going to get the coverage because the salacious stuff always will. It always will. You've been through it. Most politicians have been through it to some extent. When you have accusations that are sensational, all right, it always overrides policy.
But think about it. I mean, you've been around long enough. Would never have happened to John F. Kennedy. Would never have happened to Lyndon Johnson. Would never happen to FDR.
Right.
Because there was a convention.
Yes, and that's broken down now.
And it's totally broken.
Right.
And that may be the reality we have to live with for 20 or 30 years.
It is not going to change, and that's why good people aren't stepping up, because nobody's perfect. Everybody has things in their past that they don't want to be on the front page of the New York Times or whatever. But there's a degree, and I do believe the press has a responsibility to bring the truth to the American people. Do you feel that's happening now?
No,
is the press bringing the truth?
I think journalism, in the sense that you grew up with and I grew up with, has totally collapsed. And I think the New York Times candidly has been the leader in its collapse, because the New York Times at one time, even if it was left wing with Castro and with Stalin in the 30s, it was nonetheless a place that had very serious reporting. The stuff they've been doing recently on Trump, some of it is an absurdity, and it gets blown up. And you see,
You want to give me an example of an absurdity?
well, an example is a woman who said in the middle of a photo shoot, she thought that she was touched by the photographer's camera, but then decided, no, it must have been Donald Trump.
See, I don't even get into that stuff, because if it's filed, you know, if there's something filed and the police are investigating, and then but anybody can say anything at any time.
But the whole weight of the assault on Trump are people who never filed a charge, never made a complaint, but the New York Times has brought them all together, and they take something that, and clearly what he said on tape was stupid and despicable, and I'm glad he apologized for it. But this other stuff now is just a piling on of what else can we manufacture?
The Fox News poll that we're going to give asks a question, is the tape Access Hollywood a game breaker or not? I'm going to give you the results in a moment. But you'll remember that John McCain was put through this mill with an alleged affair that nobody ever proved. And that was a front page story 8 years ago.
Well, I was with Meghan McCain on Outnumbered today, and she was reminding people that the stuff that was done to her father is exactly the kind of scurrilous smear that is now being done to Trump. And notice it's very one-sided. I mean, I have never seen...
Trump does have a history of being a ladies' man. I mean, so not John McCain doesn't have that history. Right. Trump does. But the crux of the matter is the American people getting the truth about both Clinton and Trump. Are they getting the truth?
I'm prepared to stipulate that the candidate I like, Donald Trump, has on occasion been crude, if they'd be willing to stipulate that Hillary's both dishonest and corrupt. But they don't want to stipulate that.
They being whom?
The New York Times, the Washington Post.
No, they're not going to do that. They're not going to make a comparison of behavior between. And the reason they're not going to do it is Bill Clinton. So, you know, his behavior.
But I'm not even talking about sex. I'm talking about a woman who says 39 times to the FBI, I can't remember, and then seems to remember everything in a debate. I mean, she's just totally dishonest.
Well, okay, but...
You may not want to render that judgment. I'm here as a guest. I'm rendering that judgment.
All I'm going to say is that when you have an emotional campaign with people, being whipped up into a frenzy for one reason or another, then you lose all clarity. There's no clarity anymore. And my talking points was that both of these candidates now are damaged. They've been damaged by the media or their own actions. You, the voter, you can decide that. But they're damaged people. I mean, the inauguration, is that going to be a celebration?
Look,
no.
But also as a historian.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the chants in the late 18th, 19th century was, Mama, where's my pa? Going to the White House, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
Lincoln, at one point, was called a guerrilla. I mean, the news attacks on Lincoln were pretty good.
It wasn't this kind of a national forum where everybody hears all of the terrible details.
We're all going to have to grow into a world in which everybody has Facebook Live, everybody has YouTube, everybody has a personal camera. I mean, it's a different world.
There's no privacy and there's no dignity anymore. That's for sure. Last question. The polls say Bill Clinton's personally popular. After all,
sure.
So it looks to me like we might be going like France, that personal behavior, conduct, doesn't really resonate that much anymore.
That could be true. It's also a fact that Bill Clinton is one of the most charming people you and I have ever met. That is just it's a skill he developed in Arkansas. It's very real. He's very good at it. But I would suggest to you that his wife is not nearly as charming. And if you notice, all of these assaults have weighed her down. And I think has made this a much closer race than they thought it would be.
All right. Mr. Speaker, thanks for coming in. We appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to reading your novel. It's a contemporary treason. It's a contemporary story.